she went in her backyard, buried the KetoKrate. That's the hardest thing about the influencer program, is just being ruthless.
I could imagine that it's a challenge when you have keto in the name to kind of approach a new position.
No platform is out of bounds for me. If you are talking about the things that we're talking about, no platform is out of bounds. A lot of people just, holding their crate open and like smiling,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that was the picture. That gets old after a while, but then they had stories, so then people were able.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Creator Partnerships Podcast, a show where we try to help you start and scale your influencer campaigns by bringing you the stories of people who've already done it, who are just one step ahead or half step ahead, or maybe have approached it from a totally different angle. So we've talked about everything from the phenomenon of live shopping to the very specifics of building out influencer campaigns with celebrities to how to do it for mobile apps. And today we have the great and powerful, the kind and wonderful, the very wise and always fun to talk to, Theresa from KetoKrate. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Those were very generous compliments, and I hope that I can live up to that.
All
No
you have
pressure.
to do, all you have to do today is have a conversation with me. So you're already halfway there.
Already halfway there, and it's always a pleasure. So KetoKrate is a subscription box discovery service for people who are following a low carb and or ketogenic diet. And the way that we got started was when keto was brand new. Not a whole lot of people have heard of it. It was really hard to find snacks that were easy, on the go, convenient. You're always making your own snacks, or messing around in the kitchen with all these crazy ingredients that don't have carbs in it. It's really hard, really messy, and it gets really boring. So what we've done is we created a subscription where people can try new snacks from brands that are creating them. So we've got really two customers: the brands that we work with and the people who are subscribing to our service, and we really just merge them and help them discover each other. And it's a lot of fun, and I just absolutely love that I get to be a part of this whole low carb, get rid of sugar movement.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the way you guys have built the company out is really exciting in the sense that it feels very community oriented. And I was poking around the site again before you joined, and I'm really excited to hear about the creator side, get the full recap. So maybe what do you do there? What's your day-to-day look like, and who's on your team?
Oh my goodness. So I'm actually the very first employee that KetoKrate ever had. I lied on my resume to get my job, and then I worked my
Nice.
butt off to keep it.
Nice. Okay, very
And
good.
so I really started out with KetoKrate working in the community. I think my title back then was community management or something like that. And it was just really talking to people on social media, getting conversations started, speaking with our content creators. Back then we called them influencers a lot of the time. And now we're transitioning to content creators. And just really, having my pulse on what was going on in the communities and what did people need to be served appropriately. So that was a big focus of mine at the start. I then moved into strategic partnerships with the brands that we work with as well. And I finally moved all the way up to the top, and I am currently the CEO of KetoKrate. So I started from the bottom, but we're here, girl.
Oh, wow. I think I didn't even know that. That's awesome. Really cool. Is that a recent change, or that's always been the case?
So we officially made the change. I think it was early December last year. So I'm coming up on a year
Oh,
of that big scary CEO title.
wow. From lying to get your job to running the whole ship. That's really cool. I didn't know that story. Wow. Huh. Nice. Okay. And maybe you can say in whatever terms you can where KetoKrate is now. So I know you're mostly US oriented, for example, and you can approximately say how many customers you have from the consumer side, I guess is most relevant.
Yeah. So KetoKrate started in Canada, moved to the United States because that's where our consumer base was, and that is where all of the products, or the majority of the products, are being created and developed in the first place. And so it just made a lot of sense to move to the United States. So right now we just serve the United States. And it's really sad because we used to serve Canada as well. COVID kind of wrecked that because of just the delays at the border, and
Supply
everything was
chains.
backed up.
Yeah.
It just wasn't a good experience. So we're like, hey, let's not work on that right now, and let's focus on our home base in the United States. So so that's where we're at right now, and we're roughly five to 6,000 subscribers on a monthly basis. So that's what our membership is, and growing, and continuing to grow. So it's exciting.
Very, very cool. Okay. So let's talk about partnerships. You spend a lot of time there now, I know, and I've met the team, so they're definitely a powerhouse. What's the creator partnerships team kind of breakdown look like?
Okay, so that's me. So I am, yeah, so we're a super small team. There's actually three of us that run KetoKrate day to day. And
Hmm.
so we all wear a ton of hats. I take care of strategic partnerships on the brand side, our messaging, our content creation, and then also managing our strategic partnerships with content creators. So anytime you have to talk to anybody, that's where I'm at.
Got you. Okay, okay. So now I'm putting the piece of the puzzle together that I didn't know. I had met the whole Keto Crate team, and I thought that I met the partnerships team, which I kind of did, but the overlap
Yeah.
is 100%. That's so impressive. 6,000 subscribers to a three-person team. Really, really cool.
Yeah, we're small but mighty.
That's epic. Really love that. Okay, and what do the partnerships look like then? What are you doing? How does it work? I think it's really core to Keto Crate. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that. Is
Yeah, it
our
is.
creators your main acquisition channel then, and how do they work?
They're not our main acquisition channel anymore, but they are almost 50%. So we
Okay.
do paid media advertising as well, Facebook, Instagram, all of those things. But we didn't for a really long time, and so influencers were really core. I think we've only started using paid media in the last like 3.5, 4 years, like just right pre-pandemic is when we started, I think 2018. I'm not very good at math, so I don't even know what 2018 to 2023 is, but I'll let our listeners figure it out. Math, that's why I'm
Incalculable.
not in logistics.
Yeah, yeah.
But so for prior to that, and I've been with Keto Crate, goodness, I'm in my seventh year right now. And so when we first started out, and when I first started out, we were, maybe 1,500 subscribers, and our entire base and our acquisition was just through organic social and through our content creators and our influencer program. And back then it was managed, it was chaotic and it was crazy. There was a lot of work to do it. We were working, in spreadsheets and just reaching out and, hopping into people's DMs and then putting them into an Excel file and color coding, red, green, yellow. Like it was a disaster, but it worked.
It
And that's,
worked, yeah.
and it carried us that way. Eventually, the tools and the technology sort of we grew into them. But it's always just really been a core of, how we get the message of what we're doing out, how we keep our pulse on what the community is doing, and making sure that we're always like serving people in the way that they need to be served.
It's funny to hear you say that it was chaotic and madness because you still managed to double the company a couple times since then. So very, very
Yeah.
cool. So how do partnerships look today then? What's the kind of structure of them? You said they're about 50% of the acquisition. So how many creators are we talking? And how do you
Yeah.
how do you comp them maybe, or what channels, this kind of deal?
Yeah, and so we've that's grown and changed throughout the years. In the beginning, it was a lot of affiliate. We call it product seeding right now. So we have people, and we're like, "Hey, do you love our product? Like, we'll just give it to you. Tell me what you think about it." And so at the beginning, when keto was really hot, that was enough, and there were so many people who were so excited and so engaged that they just wanted these products because you couldn't find them anywhere. So that was enough. As time went by. And people's channels started to grow, and they had these audiences that were really valuable to us. We moved to a compensation based or a commission based structure. And so for
Hmm.
us it was, and the way that you think through your commission is just like, okay, what is my LTV on my customer, how much, how long do they stick around for, or how much can I actually spend to acquire them. And that's really how we started thinking through our commission structures. And so we were paying at the very early stages, because we were really afraid. We were paying $15 for a commission plus a $10 coupon, so it was a $25 CPA on those. And we have a lot of our partners, or our content creators, who are still on that commission based structure from, goodness, like 5, 6 years ago, even still. But recently, as the creator economy is changing, and audiences, some of these people who started with us 5 years ago, their audiences are in the millions. They're not prioritizing a $15 commission-based structure anymore, and so
Yeah.
we've had to start navigating this flat rate partnership, and really, again, figuring out what you can afford to pay. And some people are really expensive, and not that they're not worth it, but you just have to make sure that like it fits within your budget. And we're a totally
Yeah.
bootstrap company. We have zero funding at all. We have zero debt. So everything
Hmm.
that we do, we have to make sure that we're always getting a return on every single dollar that we spend. So, figuring out those flat rate partnerships, a lot of times we get turned down, or we're turning down other people and just saying, hey, like we can't take that kind of leap just yet, but hopefully it's, some point in the future.
I love it. This is so cool. So this is the story, I think, for a lot of folks is, so we've got a couple of arcs already. One is the transition from chaos where you don't, which I think is really motivating for folks because you don't need to spend tens of thousands of dollars on tooling in the beginning to start partnering with folks. The lesson is there. And the other one is this transition. So you transitioned first from pure gifting, probably partly because that's what you were kind of comfortable doing and what you could afford,
Yeah.
and it worked. Then as you started to maturize and you saw the channel works, okay, there's some predictability here. You went to this kind of $15 commissions, and then over time those creators grew, KetoKrate grew, the market changed, and you said, you know what, let's allocate some paid budget there as well. Was there a moment or a discussion internally where you made the decision on those shifts, or did it kind of happen naturally? I'm kind of wondering the thought process, or was there any resistance to, for example, the recent shift from commission model to paying creators up front? Were you scared
Yes.
about that, and how did you think
Oh,
about it?
absolutely. Absolutely. It's terrifying. It is, I swear to you, it's terrifying because I have people to answer to. I don't own the business, but so I have people to answer to. And it's really hard when you have such a tight budget and such a small margin of error, right? Like, I mean,
Hmm.
a $5,000 partnership isn't going to, sink
Not gonna
KetoKrate by any
bankrupt
means,
you.
but series of bad decisions, can absolutely, put you in a bad spot. And so there was always this fear, when the previous owners were in, and things were run a little bit differently, there was always this fear of like, this could be a total bust. We are getting $15, signups. Let's just keep running with that and sort of ignore all of these, which, in hindsight, I think that might have been, a fear-based decision that didn't really serve us. I think that we could have explored some of those partnerships a lot earlier, at
Hmm.
cheaper rates.
Hmm.
And the biggest thing is the relationship with the creator. And do you trust them? Does their content fit? And
Hmm.
really, and we have a ton of creators that reach out to us and, are looking for commission or not commission, sorry, these flat rate partnerships. And they have giant, massive audiences, but it's not within our niche. And I always go and look at their channels and it's like, okay, you posted, cupcakes or sugary cinnamon toast crunch or whatever yesterday. Your audience isn't
Hmm.
going to be necessarily responsive to our product. Like, you have a great following, your content is great. Like, I love you, I'll follow you personally, but it's just not who I can, spend a bunch of money on with no guarantee of return. Whereas, there's some other creators in the space who align with us so perfectly. One of them is, his handle is Keto Snacks, right?
Hmm.
Like, could you get a better handle for KetoKrate? Who does keto snacks, right? Like, it just, so there's those partnerships out there, and developing those relationships early on, identifying who are going to be big players eventually. And so there was another one, Suzanne Ryan. She's with Keto Karma, and
Hmm.
we partnered with her, got like when she was just a fledgling influencer, a fledgling creator, but we identified really early on that she's got a great story, her content is where it needs to be, and she's going to grow. And so we were able to sort of lock arms, help her grow, she helped us grow, and now she's outgrown us now, and she's one of these ones that is going to be doing a not really interested in a commission-based structure anymore. So, circling back to the original question, what is it scary? What did that translation look like? It is really scary. But
Hmm.
there's things that you can do to make it feel less scary, and that's really having a strong relationship with the creator that you're working with.
Mm.
I believe in just like total transparency with them, and I'm just like, hey, I'm making this $5,000 decision right now, and I'm not really supposed to be doing it, and my neck's a little bit out of the line, so I need this to work. What can we do together to make this the most successful? And if you do have a really great relationship and you're not just looking at them as like a cash cow, they're going to work with you, and they're going to really be honest with you too. I would hope that, hey, my audience might not resonate, or if they're really good at tracking, you can ask the performance metrics of the last brands that they work with that are similar to yours, and just say, like, did you get any feedback on the acquisitions that you got, or what was the revenue generated? And you can just really ask those questions. You have to. If you don't have a budget, you have to ask those questions, because you don't have the money to spare.
Do you feel like going through that transition, starting off with probably smaller creators on a lower expense model like gifting, and then transitioning, did that serve the relationship building piece? It kind of gives you time to build out those relationships with creators like the one you mentioned, and then I imagine your rates are better, it's easier to contact those folks. So I guess my question is there any circumstance where you might want to skip those steps, or do you think, in your opinion, should people kind of follow a similar transition as their own creator partnerships model evolves and so on?
I believe in the running around with your pants on fire model. It sounds terrible. Chaos. We're going back to chaos. I really think that you need to think about where people are at, how you serve them, and how they can help you, and how they can serve you as well when you're building these relationships. So I always think that there is room to work with these micro or nano influencers, and do the product seeding with them, get their feedback, and they're going to tell you, they're going to and just say, hey, I'm going to give this to you. You have a following of 5,000 or 10,000. Just tell me what you think. Post it with your audience. Tell me what they think, and if that's your goal with them. And as they are growing, or if they get a ton of signups, you're like, hey, you know what, this is great. I'm gonna put you into this next tier where you can start earning a little bit of money if you were happy with that, and if you want to continue doing it. So I think that there's knowing the different types of influencers and how they can fit into the program, and don't just go after the big whales, because they're hard. Those negotiations are hard. Managing the relationship is hard, and they're expensive. And don't overlook somebody who's just really super passionate about your product, and they just a person with 2,000 followers that just loves to talk about you. There is so much value in that. So really, I think the best way to manage your influencer program is to have sections of influencers in these different areas performing different tasks. And some can be just brand awareness. Some can really be the big acquisition hitters, and really knowing where to put them, where they want to go, and where you want them to go.
How do you think about creator selection, maybe alongside these different comp models? It would be interesting to hear. But maybe first, to set the scene, how many creators you're kind of partnered with on average now, month to month, and how many new folks do you recruit month to month?
Oh, those are two really good questions. So right now we're sitting at 133 influencers every
Nice.
single month. And that number fluctuates as some people take breaks, or move on, or we're just like, hey, it seems like your audience is a little bit fatigued, let's take a little bit of a break. And then we're constantly bringing, or trying to identify new influencers to bring into our program. But really, the majority of the people that we work with have been with us for a very long time. Some, for 3-4 years, some for 7-8 years, and since, the beginning of KetoKrate history. And then bringing on new influencers, it's getting challenging, especially when you run an influencer program in a very niche specific arena. Finding new people that you haven't worked with, or people who are still continuing. And this is where KetoKrate struggles a little bit, because obviously keto is a way of eating, or a diet, if you will. And people move in and out of those, continually, and they try it, and maybe, they've seen some success, or they drop off, or whatever, life changes, they have a baby, or whatever it is. And so we see people, moving in and out of this lifestyle. So there are, people that we've worked with who had a really, giant followings, whatever life changes happen to them, they're not continuing to eat this particular way. And so, we're constantly losing people. And so It is bringing new people is definitely challenging. And again, once you've worked with so many creators over a period of time, keto is no longer the hottest diet trend in the world right now, and so there's not a lot of new influencers coming into that stream, and so that's a difficulty if you're really niche down. Do you expand into general health and fitness? Do you expand into other adjacent areas? And that's something that we're really trying to look at and work through, and asking those questions to ourselves right now is, where do we go if this market, if we've accessed every influencer in this market, and some of it's crazy, but as some of your influencers get bigger, they kind of cannibalize a little bit of the smaller ones because they're not getting, and that's a challenge too, keeping people encouraged when their engagement is going down because everybody's, getting this from the person who has 2 million followers and, a giant team producing this unbelievable content. And, it takes away from the regular person who is just like posting passionately. So there are those challenges that you definitely have to navigate.
Do you have a
But
theory how you might approach this moving forward? I'm curious, in your case, will it be geographical expansion or like a new product line, or will it just be opening
yeah.
the door to new category of creators? What's your game
Yeah.
plan?
So we diversification is really on everyone's mind at KetoKrate, and how do we diversify? We have a really strong solid base. Keto is going to be there. People following an ultra low carb diet, they're going to be there, and they're always going to be there and need to be served. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but who are the people that may, and keto is an interesting word, and we're getting into a little bit of another topic. But keto is an interesting word because it is very polarizing, and there are a lot of schools of thought on how to do it and what you should be doing and what you should be eating. And so it really, galvanized certain groups of people, and it really made others feel marginalized. I
Mm-hmm.
have an aunt who eats keto. She eats low carb, but she will never say that she's keto because she just doesn't
Yeah.
want to fit into that, that label. So, finding people who are, keto adjacent, or finding ways to serve the people who are keto adjacent. Maybe it's just, sugar consciousness. Maybe it is people who have had or who are following, a similar type of lifestyle, maybe move into the low carb world. So, diversification is definitely something that we're talking about. And whether that comes from a new product line, a new subscription box service, or something completely different, that's, some of the stuff that we're working through right now. But it's definitely, it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah, I could imagine that it's a challenge when you have keto in the name to kind of approach a new position. But I think what's really great about KetoKrate is if you don't consider yourself to be on a ketogenic diet, then you can still eat healthy snacks, not feel bad about it, and kind of move your life in
Right.
the right direction a little bit. And I think there's so many interesting positioning options there. I can imagine there'd be, again, that's a big, like, scary hurdle to jump over and say, okay, now we're going to say we're for these people too. And that's a new
Right.
commitment. Yeah.
Right. And so yeah, that's another one of the challenges that we're just, facing as a business. But it needs to happen. And I'm really excited for when it does happen, when we find that avenues of like, hey, this is the second product line or the second subscription box or whatever it is. And really start to expand, who we work with in the influencer program. I'm really, really excited to bring, because there's tons of creators that you're just like, oh gosh, like if they were just, this low carb or they were keto, like they'd be so perfect.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, they're not, and we don't necessarily, fit into their audience.
Yeah,
So,
it's really
but
interesting. I think if I may opine with you here a little bit, I think one way to overcome this niche problem could be to think backwards from the creative. We see that tons and tons of people that we talk to face this issue. We had Pedro from Bitpanda, a crypto platform, on the pod once, and he talked about how, interestingly enough, the best creators for Bitpanda, which is one of the more it's one of the legitimate and bigger crypto exchanges. Their best creators happened to be female entrepreneurs in the end. After they had saturated the crypto market and realized that that community was not necessarily the only one they wanted to be a part of, then they moved on to different categories and saw big success. And I can imagine that for KetoKrate, you could approach it the other way and think, what's working from the content realm right now, and can we fit into those trends in some way?
Right.
And for example, I could totally imagine a I tried keto for 7 days video, or something like this, where you could actually tell that story too of how KetoKrate might be great for keto folks, but it's also just good if you want healthy snacks. And so this was my experience trying keto, and this is how KetoKrate fits into it. I could totally see you approaching it from the creative. I don't know if maybe you already had thought of this.
I'm gonna get my pencil down, and that is a great idea. And I'm gonna put it into practice. I'm gonna just see. I'm gonna see how it does, and I'll report back to you. A big piece of advice is you have to try things. You have to do if you're sitting still and you're wondering what to do, indecision is not going to serve you. You have to pick something. You have to, and use the analytics that you've got, use the information that you've got. A lot of times I'm not I'm not very good at math, so I do look at my analytics and I check that out. But a lot of my decisions are based on knowing my customer, knowing the history of KetoKrate, the business that I'm in, and using my gut. Is this going to serve me and help me in the ways that I want it? What is my best chance of doing that? And so really it's a lot of gut decisions and just making them, and do something different. If what you're doing is not working, do something different.
Yeah, I think one place we see people get stuck sometimes that's really kind of frustrating and sad for me is they have this, they have for some reason an opinion that creators can't work for them. And generally those customers are in e-commerce. And so the thing that we try to get across is that this is not advice to you. This is more you inspiring the thought in me, because I think you've nailed this probably for a very long time, is to believe in the thing you're doing, see that it works, and understand that difficult things don't mean impossible things. And so I think that when you look in the e-commerce space and you see, every company worth their salt is partnering with content creators, it might be a signal that content creators can work if you just solve the difficult puzzles. And there's so many difficult puzzles, and we don't tell everyone to push through on creator partnerships, for sure, because some people, maybe they haven't got any channels set up, for example, and we generally recommend creators aren't the first thing that works, though you're an exception to that rule. So so I just think it's really, I really love what you said, in the sense that it's a little bit about having belief in the company that you're trying to grow, having belief in the channel itself, and then solving the other way. Otherwise you'll just get stuck in I don't know, maybe creators don't work in the keto space because there's not enough of them. And it's it might be harder, but it can work, obviously.
Right. And I think that the creator economy, that's where it's going. And I can't remember, I was reading an article from somewhere, and Gary Vee, hopefully everybody knows who Gary Vee is, the biggest content creator,
I think so.
Everybody. So someone was asking him what if I wanted a job where I could make money, or the most money, where should I go? And he was absolutely content creation. That's where it's going. Everybody is going to need content creation. And that's not going away. The platforms may change, as we see. It used to be, Twitter, and now it's Instagram, Pinterest, all of these platforms. They're going to come and go, and they're going to evolve. But the need for content is never going to go away. The need for people talking about your product is never going to go away. And so get really comfy having conversations with strangers and trying to build those relationships is what I have to say. And I think that there is a creator out there literally for everyone. Where does your audience live, and where are they going, and who are they looking to be inspired by? Go where they live and find out who are the big talkers in that space, and just say hey, this is me, this is what I do. Curious on your thoughts on it. And if you go in humble and really coming from a place of, I want to understand you and your platform and what your audience is, and do we fit into that in any way? And if you go in there, humble, people want to talk, and they want to talk about themselves, and they want to talk about the things that they've done. And so it's just, getting out of your head and starting the conversation.
Absolutely. And you reap such benefits throughout the whole life cycle. I mean, you started with the advice in the beginning of having good relationships makes everything much easier. And so if you kind of approach from there, then I completely agree with you.
That's all it is. It's relationship management.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, and whatever tools you have or don't have, whatever hurdles you see or don't see, at the end of the day, it's a partnership and it's a relationship. And it's, mutually beneficial. So and it's worth putting the time into. It really is.
I think for the affiliate piece, do you still call it seeding, gifting?
Yeah, we call it product seeding, product
Product
gifting.
seeding.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So this application based? Is this inbound based, or you usually do selection and reach out outbound?
It's both.
Okay. Okay.
It's both. So we do have a process where people can apply to be in our program. It's very time consuming to go and go through all of those applications. It's a whole different, we can have a whole discussion of how hard it is to do those things. But there's other people where I just, I'm on Instagram, I'm in the spaces that I'm serving, and so I'll find somebody new and I'll just say like, hey, can I just send you this and just like you can like there's no expectation for you to post. There's no expectation for anything. But can I just send you this and you give me some raw feedback? Good, bad, or love it. And that's just the start of the relationship. Just get the conversation going. And most people I found are willing to do that.
Yeah, for sure. They're probably excited to hear from someone, especially it's very rare nowadays to have no strings attached. So I think that's really exciting and refreshing for lots of people.
Yeah.
What are your criteria? So KetoKrate does accept some inbound applications then. What are your
Yeah.
criteria when you're sifting through those applications? What kind of things are you looking for? What are the must-haves, nice-to-haves, and wow, this is going to be an
Yeah.
all-star?
So, and this is where it's really challenging, because you have to do it fast. Like if you have, 100 applications coming in a week, and it's amazing if you do, but most of them are not going to be a fit with your brand, either the audience size or the type of content, or, and you have to look at all of them. And it's almost like Tinder, where it's just like swipe, like you just have to like next, 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 until you find somebody that you're like, oh, I want to look into this a little bit deeper. And so the things that I look at are, again, are what is their content that they're producing, and I get a lot of lifestyle, mom, DIY, home decor people. And it's really interesting. And, you'll get these emails or you get these applications and they're very, I don't know if this one person is writing all of them, but they're very standard. And it's just like, hi, I believe that your product would be a great fit for my audience. This is who I am and this is my engagement and blah, blah, blah. And I would love to have a collaboration or whatever. They're very generic. And so that's one of the things that I look for is, okay, are they just putting KetoKrate's name in a blank space in a macro email?
Yeah.
And if they are and they're DIY, I just don't even respond. Like you
And
just,
this comes back to what you said earlier about enthusiasm, I think, too. So one of your criteria that you mentioned, when you know that a creator is going to be great, regardless of size or whatever, is when they're very enthusiastic. So first you do a zip through and you get rid of anything that's not important. And one of
yeah.
the main criteria is enthusiasm. I love that.
Is enthusiasm, and then fit.
Yeah.
So again, like if you're doing DIY and home decor, unless you think that the crate, the box that we have developed and made is so beautiful that you want to put it on your centerpiece of your table. Like if you do, I love you. Like I'll send you keto crates all day if you want to decorate with keto crates.
You
Like
can
I will
build
do
a
that.
castle in the house.
Right. I would do that all day long. But that's generally not the case. And so just really easy, quickly, it's you can identify, the hard yeses or the hard nos, or the hard maybes and the hard nos. And then, going into if they are a fit, lifestyle or, health, if they're keto specific, then I start to look at, okay, like what is their following, so that I first can identify like, okay, just because they have 2,000 or 5,000, that's not an automatic no, but that gets me thinking, where in the program do they fit? Is that part of the program already full? Or and do they replace somebody else? And that's really like, that's a hard decision to make too, right? There's some people that it's just not resonating with their audience despite their best efforts, and that's one of the hardest conversations. And you're just like, thank you so much, I love you and I appreciate everything that you've done. We're going to take a little bit of a break, and we can come and evaluate this later, but this is the way and I hate those conversations, but you have to have them. You have to have
Yeah.
them. So then I look at audience size, and then I go and, if it's a big audience, then I start to look at their engagement. Like, what have they posted recently? And, you'll find that there are some people who have 200,000 followers, but they're only getting 33 likes on a post and 2 comments. And you're just like, okay, what? Like, that's sort of a red flag. Like, what is going on here? Those must be fake followers. And maybe they're not. Maybe they're just, don't have an engaged audience. But that's sort of like a red flag. A large audience, not engagement. Or if you have, not really great content and it has, 1,000 likes, and you're just like going through the comments and it's just fire emojis and like hearty eyes. You're just like, okay, like something isn't right. So, looking at those metrics really helps me evaluate. And then just, if you're in the space and if you're communicating in the space and living in the space that you are serving, and for me, it's that low carb keto world, you start to know and see who are the authentic followers, who are the, if I know that a bunch of my influencers are also following this other account, like that gives me, some hope that they're like, legitimate and real and actually serving a purpose. So, yeah, there's a lot to go in it, and I think that is the most time consuming aspect of managing an influencer program is picking your influencers and vetting them, and then making those hard decisions and trying not to get caught up in the spending too much time evaluating. And there's that saying, like, if it's not a like heck yes, it's a heck no.
Yeah.
And getting into that mentality, but that's really, really, really hard, and that's why I'm not on Tinder, because I hate swiping on somebody just based on a picture. There we go.
Gotcha. All right. So anyone that's trying to meet with Theresa, then Tinder's not the spot to do it.
Don't do it.
You just order a lot of KetoKrate. That's the ticket.
Yeah. And that, and that's a really good point. If somebody is with you a really long time, if you have customers that are with you for 7-8 years, or even 2 or 3, and your, average, lifetime, of the customer is 3-4 months, but you have somebody who's sticking around, go talk to them. Go talk to them and say, hey, like, you obviously love this product. It's working for you. If I give you this code, I'll give you blah, 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 or a free crate every time you, whatever. Like, turn your best customers into your best advocates. Because there's nobody who's going to love you more than somebody who uses your product and is sticking around for a long time. Like,
Yeah,
go and find those
absolutely.
people.
They already
So,
know and like you, and they know how to talk about the product. They have a
right,
story about the product already. They don't have to make something up that's kind of not as authentic as it otherwise would be.
right.
If I've used my Rode microphone here for a long time, I can tell a much better story about all the shows I've done and how reliable it's been than if I just arrived in the mail and I've got to be like, ooh, it's pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's something novel in the clarity you gave on how you go through your long list of inbound applicants. So creators apply to KetoKrate, and the first thing you do is you kind of call them. If it's not a heck yes, it's a heck no. You get rid of them based on whether or not they're enthusiastic or templated. You review the content to see if it's like totally off base, is it DIY, and so on. And then you start digging into the metrics further. And I love what you said about not over investing in like every granular little detail. If it's a heck yes, you'll see it quickly. And if it's not, then it's a no. And that's really well stated, I think. I really appreciate the flow. I think a lot of people miss the step where it's like, just be ruthless in the beginning, I think. Like, get rid of everything so that you have a much shorter stack of work to do. Yeah.
And focus your time on the people who are going to, matter most. And it's hard. I think that's the hardest thing about the influencer program, is just being ruthless, culling the list, because you go through, like, mentally, you go through so many, or at least I do, but you go through so many emotions, and it's not just like, oh, I feel bad for this person, but also, hey, what if this person is actually like lightning in a bottle? What if I'm missing something here? Am I evaluating them too harshly? Should I talk to them? Should I explore this? Like, you just go through, and I've been doing this for so long, and literally every single day when I am evaluating the inbound influencer applications, I do the same thing, and I have those same fears and you just have to, trust yourself. You just like, and it's so hard, but just do it. Like you have to. Otherwise, you're never going to get through those programs. And at the end of the day, having a lot of applications is better than having no applications. So get good at getting down and dirty with it.
Nice. That covers inbound, and I know you outreach to creators, and now you're doing bigger flat rate payments with creators for the first time ever. Have you changed, or is there a different tweak on your kind of algorithm for how you select creators for those big flat rate payments?
Yeah. So sorry, I cut you off.
No, go.
I was just too excited. So flat rate partnerships are like really, really, really new for us. And in fact, we're doing our very first 2 in October. So this is totally new territory. I had to like figure out how to write influencer contracts. It's not something that I'm managing within our current platform that we're using. It's going completely outside of it. So, and then negotiating all of the things like, can we, repost? And do we, when we say we repost organically, like, do you consider our blog organic or no? Or like, so you have to like go through all of these things. But anyway, so that's very time consuming. It's, and it's a totally different process than what we've done before. But so for outreach though, I've been fortunate enough, like Keto Snacks was one of those creators that was really teeny tiny at the beginning, and he was really happy doing these, $15, commission-based signups for a long, long time. And then when he got to a certain level, he said, no, I am not going to, I'm like, this is not worth my time when I'm getting, brands working with me at these flat rate purchases. And it makes sense, content is, that's the other thing. Like, value your creator's time because content is hard. It is hard. And it's time consuming. And building an audience over years is time consuming. It puts a lot of work and a lot of digging in your heels through the hard times. So value your creators. I know that there's a little bit of this tendency to be like, oh, they're an influencer. They just like want free stuff. Like there's some of that mentality that still goes around. And I get it, but if you've ever tried to create content yourself, understand what goes into it. It is difficult. It is difficult, and it's difficult to stay consistent. Anyway, so that was my tangent. Be nice to your creators. So we worked with this one influencer, for a very, very long time, made the switch eventually and said, hey, no, I'm not going to do that. We had somebody else who was looking over the program at that time, and they were just like, okay, and they just let that relationship die. And now I've had to go back and just be like, hey, I'm, back in the saddle here, and this is the things that I want to do. I know that these are your rates. I know that, you're really valuable. And this was great. If you already have somebody who's small, you can kind of expect how it's going to perform over time. And so for this particular creator, they haven't posted in a year, maybe a year and a half, but every single month, that old content is still getting 3 or 4 conversions. So like, hot dang, like that is a pony that I can bet on. And I may not get, and I know how many acquisitions I need to get from, this flat rate in order to break even and in order to make it successful, right? So I know that if I don't get that all in one go, that content is going to live there forever. And that's how we structured our contract. Is I wanted that, long content where it just stays forever versus a story, because those I know are converting for him. So that's the way we structured it. I had to redevelop that relationship, and so that was really easy and good with him. In some ways, it was difficult, like being like, hey, sorry, kind of like ghosted you, or maybe you felt like we didn't value you, and sort of repairing that. And then for our other one that we're exploring. She's one of the biggest hitters in the space, low carb love. She's one of the first, and she's one of the biggest heavy hitters. And she's always been unattainable for KetoKrate because she's always been at that flat rate level. She wasn't ever with us on this commission structure or even the product seeding at the beginning. So that one was a little bit different. And with her, I'm working with her agency. And that's a whole different ball game. And in fact, so the first email I sent to her was just like, hey, like, this is who I am, this is who we are. And because we're so connected in the space, she knows who KetoKrate is. She's seen other influencers post about it because she's within the space as well. And it's a, tight, small knit community. So people have seen it us a lot. Anyway, so then there was that outreach, and then just working with her agents and her agencies, and it's a little less personal. And sort of what I'm doing there is just really trying to get in good with the people who are working for her,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
that's my closest connection to them. So that's my strategy at this point. It's going to be really interesting to see, because they're both posting in October, so it's going to be really interesting to see how they perform differently. And it's, we've got them on the same rate. One is just doing a story, one is doing a reel that is going to be chopped up into a 3-part story, so we've got a little bit more content on the one side. So I'm just really curious, out of the two, who's going to have that the big acquisition numbers.
Very cool. Do you have a suspicion who will win the acquisition war?
It's okay. So yes, in the short term, I think it's going to be her. But there's a piece of me that's like, do not underestimate this guy. So I think that in the short term, I think it's going to be her. I think in the long term, it's going to be him. So
Yeah, because that content's lasting. So now KetoKrate makes this transition from commission-based and kind of gifting-based partnerships to flat fees. There's lots of there's kind of taking on a new set of risk in this. You got to pay up cash up front, and KetoKrate is a cash flow driven business. You're funded by your customers, so you have to respect the bottom line, so to speak. Then the way you overcame this is to run a 2-part experiment. One is with your top performer, or one of your better performers from your commission-based program structure, and to take someone who's just kind of the icon in the space and to run the experiment. Really, really cool. And in doing that, the amount that you paid those folks considered, you mentioned LTV, how many people you need to get back, and you kind of ran the calculation. Can I reasonably expect that these people will drive at least the number of conversions I need to pay for themselves, and then your risk is basically zero. At least you have zero risk. Of course, we're looking for upside. We don't want to use that money without the upside. But at least if you get to break even, then the experiment hasn't been a failure. So that's great.
yeah.
Very
Absolutely. So, and that's the first thing, is just, going out. The experiment is, hoping to just break even. And the way that I like to build myself a little bit of buffer. So I want to know how many people in month one, because we're a subscription, it's a little bit different, because we have people who stay on for 3, 4, 5 months. So overall, I know how much a customer is worth to us in, that 6, 7, 8 month period. Which tells me how much I can spend. But I like to build myself a buffer and say, what do I have to do? How many do I have to get in to be at break even at month 1 or month 0, however you calculate that. And then I know that a certain percentage of those people are going to stick around for 6, 7 months, and I can expect that on average, they're going to be worth $1 value for me. So I always just I just, take out the prospect of the future. Maybe everybody from her audience is oh my God, I'm going to get this. And then they absolutely hate it and they all cancel. But then at least that's a 0, and that's not likely to happen, but it gives me some peace of mind when I go to bed at night. So figuring out, how do I break even in month 1? And that's, I'm not sure how you do that if you're not a subscription product. And if that would be, a different calculation if you're in that space. I'm sure that you know how to figure that out. But for me, being a subscription, I, have a really good idea of how long or how much a customer is worth to me. But my big thing is let's just hit 0 break even on month 1. And after that, anything that happens is good.
Yeah, and if you aim at an exceptional target like that, it's okay, I think it's this comes back to that hope piece that we said earlier. It's if I think this is physically possible and it's reasonable from a cash flow perspective, then I'll just aim for that. And worst case, maybe the experiment doesn't go so well, but I'm not gonna damage the business or spend an exceptional amount of time on this or whatever. Yeah.
And just being being clear with, again, and transparency. Like if you want to have a good relationship, like tell them what your expectations are. And again, you hope if, they're really a creator that you want to work with and they're trusted within the space and they're authentic and they're not shady in any way, that they're going to tell you and be honest with you that like, yeah, I believe that my audience can do this or come, really close to it, or no, I can't. And so I told, like, when I, sent this email or I started talking with this agency, and I was just like, this is what I have to hit in order for it to be successful. Like, can you send me anything that would, prove or, have some
Indicate to me that this will
indicate
work
to
out.
me, yeah, that this is going to be okay. And, and they did, and they worked with, a number of other brands that I've partnered with in the past. And, they had some really great metrics. And I was like, okay, it could always not work out, but this gives me enough trust in that it will. Conversely, with my other flat rate partnership, I asked him for metrics. He's not really good at metrics. He's great at content. That's what he does. And he, goes in with an answer that, most people that I work with come back every single month. And I can see that in the content that he's creating. And
Yeah.
so I can go back and see like, okay, well, how many times has he posted with, this brand that I'm also aware of? And you can
Awesome.
just, contact other brands and just be like, hey, like, how did this work?
I guess in that case too, you benefit from having worked with him on the commission structure too, because you have some
Yeah.
expectation already.
Yeah. And that gives me, a lot of hope. And then, try to work, with them. And this, again, there's always a balance. You have to value your creator's time, the audience that they've built, and the authority that they have within their, their space. So you have to respect that. But there's always room to negotiate. And again, when you come back to relationship building, if you're really building a relationship and you really want to be a part of the space and you're authentically serving the space yourself, those people want to see you succeed as well. And so they can maybe say, all right, I can't do all of these things for this rate, but here's what I can do and here's what we can, expect. And just, again, tell people what you need, ask for what you need. And, the worst that they can say is no. And then maybe that's not, the relationship for you, but at least, you came to the table with, with that expectations set and being really authentic. And those are, again, it's just all about relationships at the end of the day.
I love it. So we touched on selection and pretty clear how you selected for these flat fee partnerships. We didn't talk much about kind of audience demographics. Do you dig much into that, or do you kind of approach from the assumption that they're in the niche, they're in the country, the rest is fine?
Yeah. So, and for my product, it's really easy because, so I know my demographics really, really well. Those demographics are in line with all of the other brands that I work with that are in the same space. And so I've got a lot of insider like info about where I'm at in the space and who are the people in general that are buying it, because we're so niche down. We look at that, but it does come into play. So there is, so our demographics were predominantly women who are ketoing to lose weight. And that's, mostly what, who the people that we're serving. Now, there are people who follow a keto diet for, neurological reasons to manage, type 1 or type 2 diabetes. And then there's also the people who keto for performance, and they're like the bodybuilders and, stuff like that. That is not my demographic. So I guess in that way, just by looking at the content itself, I can see, is this geared towards male or female? Is it geared towards performance? Is it geared toward kids? Like, do they fit? And you don't need analytics to really see, hey, do we match who we're talking to and in the way that we're talking. So I don't look at analytics for that really, unless I'm, questioning, are these people real and where are they coming from? And if I'm questioning where your people are coming from, I'm probably not going to partner with you in the first place. So but just, knowing where you fit in the space, knowing your demographic really, really well, and knowing where those people live, what they're talking about, the content that they're consuming, will give you an idea if this influencer is going to be, good or bad. I make a lot of gut-based decisions. I'm not super big on analytics. I am in some ways, but I don't I don't get caught up in them because I find they can make you indecisive. At the end of the day, you
Hmm.
have to make a decision. And they're always competing. Like, hey, this person has a huge following, but their engagement is low. But then does the following outweigh, this engagement? And when it comes to those, really close calls, you just have to make a decision eventually. So,
And you have
um,
two really strong tools in your toolbox that a lot of people don't have. One of them is that you have this massive schema of having been not only in your category for a long time, but in your company for a long time, and having looked at that customer base and those creators that have worked and haven't worked and
yeah,
gone through this transition. So you have a fantastic schema of what's a fit, I think. And on the other side, so far, you haven't had a whole lot of downside risk because of the nature of how you structured the
yeah.
partnerships. It's the worst case scenario, you give up a free box of KetoKrate, which is probably a cost that you can afford, and it's a risk that you're capable of taking. And so, yeah, those are that kind of leads you to the position where you can be a little bit more instinctual. We have very little
Yeah.
downside risk and a fantastic schema for what this space is and who's in it and who's not.
Right. No, that's very true. I would probably look different if I had no experience and a small budget and just had to go and like make things work. But, if you're just starting out, I think with an influencer program, like start small because like when
Hmm.
you're going after these big, like even for me, like I would never want to talk to like Kim Kardashian because I just don't even know how to approach somebody like that. Not that she's,
Hmm.
a great fit for KetoKrate, um, but yeah, like start where you're like most comfortable. Like, hey, like I'm really comfortable talking to somebody with 10,000 followers. I think this is going to be easy to relate. Like learn together. Don't
Hmm.
go, 0 to 100. Yeah. So find people who are just really, could be passionate about your product. Start with your consumer base, start with your customers. If you got people there already that just, love and want to talk to you about them, talk to them and just say like, hey, would you like to, you know, talk about us to other people, or do you know anybody else that wants to do this? And if you do, here's what we can compensate you.
Love it. So a lot of your selection and relationships are driven through that inbound community driven nature of what KetoKrate is. From the program, you said you get in front of a lot of people, and especially over the last years. So people come inbound, you drive for referrals, you do those gentle nudges of, hey, we'd love to send you a crate with low expectations. And otherwise you look at I would say the big picture of, does this person have a relevant audience that's engaged? Are they genuinely enthusiastic? They're a customer, or they're in the space, they're in the ecosystem, and they're producing content that I know matches our target audience. And I think,
Right.
if you nail all those things, then it's pretty hard to have a poorly performing partnership. Maybe that person's got 17% of their audience in Canada or something, and maybe if you looked into the data, it wouldn't be perfect, and maybe that would make you indecisive. So I kind of I can totally see why focusing on those big picture bits and having it down makes sense. We didn't talk about platforms at all, which is especially interesting considering the struggle you mentioned of niching down, like really saturating the whole niche. So far, I think we've been talking mostly about Instagram, but have you experimented on TikTok, YouTube? Any plans to scope that in the future?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I no platform is out of bounds for me. If you are talking
Nice.
about the things that we're talking about, no platform is out of bounds. So, Instagram, was the OG. So
Hmm.
like the OG like influencer, space.
Ecosystem. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And so a lot of our influencers are just on there naturally. But people are moving off of it and going to TikTok. So we're on TikTok too. I have influencers who just have really large Facebook communities. So they start, or they're
Mm.
administrators of, big communities. And I'll talk to I'll go on like all those Facebook communities and I'll talk to the admin and be like, hey, this is what we do. Does that work for you? Like, does that fit in with, the ethos of your community and the group and the people that you're trying to serve? If so, hey, here's a thing that we could do together. So Facebook communities, and they're gated, like they're not open to the public. So it's just all of the members within it will hear once a month or, twice a month about this product or service or whatever. So yeah, Facebook communities, YouTube, we've done Twitch, we've done like every channel is I am open
Nice.
to because, and then there are people who are talking about our products in more spaces than one. Obviously, Instagram is one of them, Facebook communities is one of them, and TikTok is one of them. I'm not going to focus a lot of effort necessarily on somebody who's got a big following on Pinterest. Just because not, I don't think a lot of people are having actual conversations within Pinterest. They're looking for, other things. But anyways, yeah, but there's no real platform. And bloggers, lots of bloggers we use as well. So there's nobody that's off limits for me.
Got you. So generally, platform agnostic, but so far have been mostly Instagram focused, yeah?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, the majority is Instagram, followed by Facebook and catching up by Twitter. Oh, not Twitter. Oh
Gotcha.
my God, TikTok.
Okay,
Not
gotcha.
Twitter. Not Twitter.
We've zipped through the high level overview of creator partnerships at KetoKrate. We talked about how to select creators and what goes into that. And one trend that's come up consistently is that relationships are at the core of your kind of unique strength in this space. Your selection comes a lot out of relationships. The way that you negotiate your comp models comes a lot out of those relationships. The way you, overcome hurdles that maybe other people would find really, really challenging. All of that comes out of the fact that you build these super genuine relationships with people. So with that in mind, I'm curious about the challenges of managing these, especially in a small team. So what kind of problems have you faced and how have you overcome them? Any big hacks, tips, and tricks for managing great relationships with creators?
Yeah. Find yourself a really good email program that allows you to use variables. And what I mean
Ah,
by that is so that you can write one email and then, have it personalized for everyone. And that's a big, saver for me. And there's things that I do. I'm really myself. Like if you want to build a relationship, like you have to be yourself. And I'm a little bit quirky and I like lots of emojis and it's not professional in any way, shape or form. But I just want it to be always like a fun, positive interaction. I share little bits about my life, even when I'm providing information. So, we send them the KetoKrate every single month. And then I just, send them a follow-up email. Hey, here's some pictures that you can use. Here's some products that I'm really excited about and why I think like you might be excited about them too. And then, I'll tell them about, when I went to water aerobics and I was there by myself with, 90-year-old ladies and had the best time of my life. Like, it was great. It was great.
love it.
Water, aqua size, totally down for it. But, just sharing these little bits, let them in too. And that's how you're going to develop a relationship. But variables make it, really, really easy that I can tell these stories, be a great storyteller, give them the information that they need, do it in a fun way that represents yourself and the brand that you are. And people love it. Like I get responses to a ton of my emails, and it's always this, a newsletter, but they're just like, oh my gosh, like that was so funny. Like here's my experience with water aerobics, and so just opening up the opportunity to have conversations outside of like just a work-based relationship, and then just talk to them. But yeah, so variables make it, find something where you can send out a macro email that doesn't feel like a macro email. Make sure it does not feel like a macro email because I ignore those ones and everybody else does too. And just share bits of you with them, and that's how you're going to create that relationship in the first place. And so that I guess would be like, the biggest one is just staying in contact, giving them the information that they need to know, and opening the doors for them to talk to you about whatever. So that's one. Another one is engaging on their platforms as well. When you see a great piece of content from them, go when they're sharing their stories, like go into your own DMs and then reshare those stories and just, have someone on your social team do it. Like just go in and repost that content, say like, oh my gosh, like thank you so much, like we're so excited for this and this, and have a conversation with them on there. I'll go on to, we have some influencers are on TikTok, and then they'll go and do lives on a Saturday morning, and I'll just be scrolling through TikTok and I'll come across one, and then I just start chatting with them with whatever they're talking about. They could be talking about gardening, and I'll just have a conversation about whatever they're having a conversation about, and then it naturally just builds that relationship. So just do the things that you would normally do with a friend of yours and try to scale it, I would say. try to do it on
Nice.
mass.
Which way would you stack rank those if somebody came to you for the first time and wanted advice on managing relationships? I think I know the answer to this question, but which one comes first? Being Theresa and being a human and doing the small details of pinging people and resharing content, or is it the automation and the tooling and the rest? How would you stack rank those three things?
Okay, so it is a combination of both. It is being Teresa and doing the big things. So being myself and doing, because there's things that you have to do. You have to tell your influencers about, the expectations that you have of the program or what they're supposed to be doing that month. And because we work with people every single month, year over year, the products are always changing. Things are, in the crate. If there's an issue that I have to, talk about, there was one time, oh my gosh, I sent the same month's crate 2 times in a row, and then I had to go and email everybody and be like, my bad, friends, I made this big boo-boo, so you're gonna get this crate, but don't talk about that one, wait another week and then you get so there's things that you're going to have to do, communications that you are going to have. Figure out how to make them less painful, less business driven. Make them fun, make them an email that, somebody wants to actually read. And so that would be the biggest thing. Do the things that you have to do, the big things, and inject yourself in every element of that. And don't worry about being I am a manager of people and influencers and I have this, whole thing that I have to,
Just be a real person.
Just be a real person. And and maybe you're not funny. I'm sorry if you're not, but maybe you're not, I'm sorry if that's your life, but maybe that's not, where you're at and you're just really, compassionate, or you're just really mellow and but whatever you are, be your authentic self. And people are going to appreciate it and they're going to love you for that.
Totally, yeah. It's people will have loyalty to Theresa much more than they can have loyalty to a brand. It's just not our nature to
Right.
kind of attach ourselves to those sorts of things. And so I think, creating that little bit of delight just by being a normal person is really, really good advice. You have a lot of creators who've been with you for a long time. Has there been challenges in keeping them kind of engaged and active? Do you have to put some effort into making sure people know kind of what to post or those kind of things? Any challenges in just having those people on board for a long period of time? Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. There's challenges. No, there really
I cry
is.
myself to sleep every night.
Every single night. No, but there are absolutely challenges. And I even, face them myself as a content creator. If I'm talking about, a meat stick, and I've been talking about a meat stick once a month for the last 7 years, what more can you say about a meat stick, right? You've said everything that there is to say about a meat stick at that point. And so there can be creative fatigue that does happen. One of the things that just combats that a little bit naturally is the platforms opening up new ways to communicate. So before on Instagram, it was just photos, right? And we'd get a lot of people just, holding their crate open and smiling, and that was the picture. That gets old after a while, but then they had stories. So then people were able to, and at first they were 15 seconds long. So they had to really just be hey, here's my crate, ha ha ha, this is so great. And as the platforms develop, your creators, if they want to, really be successful as a content creator, if that's their primary goal, they're going to want to grow with what these platforms are offering and using the new features. So that combats it a little bit. If, one of the issues or challenges that we have at KetoKrate is a lot of our creators are not, that's not their primary focus. They never wanted to really be, an influencer. They have a
side
full-time
hustle,
job. Yeah, it's just a side hustle, or it's just something that they're really passionate about and they're not looking to, maximize the monetary gain. They're just hey, this is just what I do. If I can make a little bit of money, that's cool. And if not, I don't care either. I'm getting this, free thing every month and that's enough for me. So they might not necessarily be as, proactive in trying these new features on the platforms, and those are the ones that you really have to maybe talk to about hey, instead of just posting yourself with the crate every single month with a very similar caption, maybe try this, or maybe try a different thing, put it in outside, take it inside. photograph it in your car or how you're using it. And that's really a big thing, is just telling people, and not being afraid to tell people how you want them to talk about your product. And it's not,
Yeah, help them out.
yeah, you absolutely help them. And you want them to be authentic. Like you're not saying only say good things about this product. You can talk about KetoKrate and be like, hey, you know what? Like these products in this month, they really weren't for me. But the service as a whole, like I like it and I'm excited for my next, or whatever you want to say. But talk about your product. When I say teach them how to talk about your product, give them prompts. Like where do you use the product? How does it serve you? When does it serve you? Where are you finding that you're using it the most? And really, getting people to think, just stopping and taking a minute to think about, hey, like I am posting about this. What do people want to hear? Like, why do they even care? They don't just, like I'm not that pretty that my face and this crate are, gonna do everything month over month for years on end. Like, what does your audience want for value? And just having those conversations, similar, like, how we're having conversations, they have relationships with their audience. Don't post just to post. Post because you have something to say
A
that's
story
going
to
to be
tell.
of value to the people who are listening. So yeah, I guess encouraging, and then there's other, tips and tricks if we find out like an influencer is, struggling with like lighting or, the audio or whatever it is. We can send out like, hey, here's some, top three whatever for creating better content, for taking better photos, for writing better stories, for, all of these things, or how AI can help you, write better captions. So you write your crappiest caption that you want to say and just say it in the worst way possible, put it into chat GPT. It's going to make it a little bit more engaging or humorous or whatever. And then you can, go and rework that, or it can give you some prompts and ideas. So just how to use the technology and the things available to you to just make your content better and continually grow.
Absolutely love it. How do you deliver all this advice, all these insights? So, I mean, it sounds like the big core is keep people kind of inspired and motivated to keep publishing, help them overcome those hurdles, little small frictions. I mean, we all know day to day in our work that you use a tool that like you can't find the button. You might just leave the application and forget that task ever existed. And so I
Right.
think helping people overcome some of those hurdles and creating the content, what should I make, and so on, sounds really core, and I totally love it. But how do you relay all that info? How does that work? How do you keep people? How do you actually get that message in front of somebody?
Emails.
Okay, nice. And as
Yeah,
I
again,
understood, you have a pretty regular cadence for those things.
yeah, I do. So I try to email my influencers, once a week with just, the must dos. So this is the product, this is, whatever, and then just update them with, what's going on in KetoKrate. Hey, I found this really cool thing, or this, really cool insight from our paid advertising, where when we're sending out this messaging, it's performing over that messaging. So if you want to talk about this, or and you want to like earn more commissions, that might be a way that you can talk about it differently. So, and that's the thing, is if you have a lot of commission based partnerships, they want to know how to do better, right? And that's kind of what I think limited us from these flat rate partnerships, is I think there was a lot of distrust at first, where it's like, well, I'm going to give you 5,000 or 10,000 or whatever $1,000, but you could literally do the worst post ever and I have absolutely no recourse. And again, it comes back to, do I trust this person? Do we have the relationship? Do they know what, I'm a person too that needs a paycheck and needs to, feed my family. So do they know that like their performance is directly related to my performance? Are they going to work with me on this and put as much and care as much as I do? So I think that's really the great thing, again, about these flat rate partnerships, is they want to learn, they want to get to that next level, they want to grow their audience. And if you have insights that can help them get there, either with the content that they're promoting for you, or just their other content in general,
Yeah.
they're really receptive to it. And so I try to email them, once a week, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, depending on what I have to say. But again, just always making it like super duper fun to read my emails, so that, you ever have a friend that just like texts you and they're always saying something like, either funny or like super interesting or what.
Yeah,
And you're just
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I love when this person texts me.
Yeah.
Just being that person for them. And always providing, again, it's just another audience member, like provide value to them, walk with them through the whole journey. Don't just, it's not a set it and forget it.
You mentioned before that, it started off and you really suddenly had this catalog of a lot of people holding the box and doing this. Do you have any good stories of surprising pieces of content, surprising things people did that either worked really well or were just inspiring to you? Any kind of concepts that have struck you?
So the best pieces of content that perform over others is just live unboxings, right? It's live unboxings, live taste testings. But those aren't like super
Ooh.
duper surprising. I mean, it's a subscription box. That's, a little bit of the standard. We have had, there was one, and oh gosh, I wish I could credit her because I can't remember her name, but she did a whole, like she went in her backyard, buried the KetoKrate, because her husband was keto. She sent him all of these clues. So he had to like climb a tree and like get this clue and then they don't cross this, whatever. And then all to dig up the KetoKrate at the very end. And that was just such a fun piece of content. I have no idea if it, performed, but she had a great time doing it. I had a great time watching it. Everybody who saw it, like, was just like, that is awesome. Like, and and sometimes that's all it comes down to is this person loved my product so much that they did this like really cool thing. And that's, and it was great and it was worth it. And sometimes, when you're evaluating your influencers, not all of them are going to have conversions. In fact, most of ours don't have conversions, which is really, we have about 40 or 50 that are super reliable that you're like, I know I'm going to get, every time they post, I'm going to get X. But most of our people don't actually convert. And so it's just them talking, but that's the brand awareness portion of it. And a lot of them are the creators with 2,000 to 5,000, 10,000, these
Right.
smaller platforms, but are so loyal and creating great content that I wouldn't even consider getting rid of them. So I guess if you want to talk about that really quickly, relationship management, part of managing a relationship is knowing when to end the relationship.
When to break up.
And it's hard. It's hard, and it hurts my little heart. But you have to do it. It's part of the program.
Do you have thresholds, especially for folks who are just on a pure, maybe they're on commission, but they're not converting people, so it's not costing you cash? Do you still have a threshold of like, this has to happen or we have to kind of separate?
Yeah. And so what I do, and this is another really time consuming piece because there's not really a platform that I found that does a good job of this. And we've actually talked about this a little bit before, but for me, if you haven't posted anything about KetoKrate in the last 3 months and you haven't got a conversion in the last 3 months, like I have to move on and open that. Yeah, I have to open that. And before I do that, it's just like, hey, like whatever, like, hey, I noticed that like in the last 3 months, like this hasn't happened. Like, are you still interested? Like, what's going on? Are you, maybe they're opening emails, and you don't know, like maybe they're like, father passed away, or maybe they were posting in stories, but for some reason that content wasn't being pulled in. And then you're like, oh, okay, like it was an error, or their, page became disconnected from whatever platform. So, have that conversation, with people that, you're removing, and just, that it's a tough part of the relationship, managing that part. But it's a necessary evil. I don't like it. But yeah, so those are my thresholds for doing that is if you haven't posted and you haven't got a conversion, then it's the audience isn't necessarily there. And if they're like, hey, give me one more month to show you that I can do this, I'm like, okay, if I trust them, if the relationship is good, then maybe I will or maybe I won't, and cross that bridge when you get there.
A similar question to the content one. I'm curious about the relationship building piece, or not the relationship building so much, but the keeping people engaged piece, or getting them to spice it up a little. What are the craziest things you've done to really help get a creator rolling or secure a partnership? I don't know. Are you sending free KetoKrates to agency owners, or what are you doing?
No, I don't know if there's like I don't know if I've done anything really crazy there yet. We've experimented before with leaderboards. If we really in our experience, like leaderboards are a lot of work and they don't really inspire a lot of people. And I get it. I get
Oh.
it because if you're all the influencers within your space, if you're as niche down as we are, they know who every other influencer is as well. And they know if they're working with you because they will see those unboxing videos, right? So if I'm somebody with 10,000 followers and I'm going up against somebody who has 650,000 followers and I'm trying to compete on a leaderboard level,
Doesn't make sense.
like it just doesn't make sense. Like why would I do that? Like I'm not going to, that's not what is going to motivate me.
Yeah, absolutely. If I can just say that I think from our perspective, we've seen the leaderboard experiment a bit, and what we've seen work better are more kind of recognition that isn't doesn't depend on how big you are or how
Yeah.
whatever you are. So, for example, Surfshark, who came on the pod too, they do an influencer award ceremony. I think every year they do a whole award ceremony where they have like external judges. I had the pleasure of judging some of the content this year. And it's really amazing. And they focus mostly on the creative. It's like, this is, please watch this content and tell us which one had the best acting and the best production and the best whatever. And so that's the big scale of it. The smaller scale that just about anybody can execute is as part of that newsletter where you're explaining what kind of content is working and so on. It's like, hey, here's 3 pieces we really loved last month. It's not about how much they converted necessarily. It's just 3 pieces the team really loved. Here's Theresa's favorite. Here's Avery's favorite. Here's Bob's favorite or whatever. And I think this can be a really interesting way to do the same thing without making it about how much money you're making or how much bigger somebody else is, and creating that rift also between creators where it's like, oh, I'm kind of envious of that person now who I should be kind of a colleague of in a way.
I love that idea, and that is absolutely going into the next newsletter, which I write tomorrow. But yeah, no, and that's a great way to do it. So we have done, we've done leaderboards. We have done, and yeah, just not a great experience with leaderboards. We will do like exclusive partnerships for certain things or giveaways, which again, they're not like crazy or exciting. And then during certain like holidays, will either, up their commission for 2 days. So, hey, for these next 2 days, instead of 15, like, we're going to up it to 20. And if you hit X, we'll give X. And, or, if you create this style of content, we will pay you a bonus of $250. And then we're going to use that content in this location. So there's little things that we've done. Nothing too crazy. I would love to get crazier with some of the partnerships that we have. I want to wait until I am in a new content management platform to do that, not content creator management platform, in order to do that.
I love those little incentives, though. Running those little experiments is a big thing. It's a big thing when you do it at scale. I mean, trying little, hey, here's $250 more if you do this. Hey, here's some of the content we really loved last month. Here's like those little tiny experiments at scale that don't take a ton of your time, especially as a super efficient team. I think that this is something people miss, is they think maybe I do have to put a blimp above the person's house that says we love Kim or whatever. But really, if you can run those little experiments at scale, save yourself a ton of time. And most people just aren't willing to do it. And you mentioned earlier that this is a competitive environment increasingly over time. So there is lots and lots and lots of brands that are partnering with these creators and spamming them in their inbox and doing all kinds of stuff. And the little details add up compound over time to create something very different for them, and something that's just unique enough that they'll say, oh, when the next thing goes wrong, the next brand they work with something goes wrong, their payment is late, or they never hear from the brand, or it feels very transactional, or whatever happens, they'll remember, oh, you know who never made me feel that way? Theresa and KetoKrate. And that's really, really powerful. Just having the competitive edge of little experiments over time, a little bit of humanity.
Another thing that we do that I just thought of as you were talking is with some of our, bigger, not, I wouldn't say bigger, but the ones who are working really hard and the ones who are really consistent and the ones who are getting acquisitions, every single month, creating a custom landing page that has their face is just like a little, like an ego boost.
Make them feel important.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and everybody loves to feel important. So just, little things like that. I can't do it for 133, rotating people. But there are people that I'm like, hey, you know what? We've had this relationship forever. We are, this is what we can do. And just doing that little extra like nice thing. Another thing that we were looking into over the summer was creating swag with some of our creators. And whether if it was they're doing recipes, well, let's get them their followers or whoever signs up with their code is going to get this discount and this spatula that has their signature on it or whatever it
Ah,
ends up
so
being.
cool.
Right? And then it's just like you're trying to develop a relationship with the content creator and you're trying to develop a relationship with the content creator's audience. So if you can find ways to have all of those things happen at once, I just think like that's where a lot of magic happens.
KetoKrate has tons of ambassadors for many years now. How do you measure success of your influencer program? What do you consider in deciding whether to invest more, invest less, invest differently? What kind of metrics do you look at on the other side of a
Yeah.
partnership?
Overall, the way that we, figure out, is this program successful? Is this program profitable? And so, right, like that's, so knowing, what you've spent and taking into account the discount codes that you're offering. So, and everybody gets a $10 discount, and then the commissions that you're paying, and whatever that adds up to, is that a profitable CPA or is it not a profitable CPA? And going from there. And as long as we're profitable, we can work towards improving that. If we're not, then it's like okay, or the CPAs are creeping up because not a lot of influencers are performing, or there's something happens and we lose a big one. Then it's like okay, how do we combat that? So we're constantly looking at CPAs. There are more, like that's our big one, right? This is a channel primarily for acquisition because that's where we're at as a business. It has to work. And even if those CPAs start creeping up and they're still profitable, we can look into okay, so where do we use this content, and do we, are we have this great platform. We have all this content that's coming in. Like, are we using that content to the best of its ability? What is the value of that content? Those types of things. So it really depends. Like measuring the success of your program really depends on like what are you trying to get. For us, it's acquisitions. Everything is always about acquisitions. The fringe benefits are, brand awareness, the lift that you just sort of see in other areas, and then the content creation aspect of it. But yeah, primarily it's always CPAs. And then overall, we use a blended CPA for all of our platforms because it's really hard to know. Okay, so you have paid, and then you have your organic, and then you have your influencers, and you have all these. You have your email, which is actually super easy to track. But you have all of these things that are going into your blended CPA, and it's really hard to know if this attribution or this click on paid is getting the credit, but is it because a month ago they saw this influencer post this thing? And so there's no linear really great way to track things linearly, so we look at everything on a blended basis, and every month we go back and see, hey, on a blended basis, was all of our marketing activity profitable or not profitable? And if it was, awesome, let's try to make it better. And if it wasn't, then okay, what channel seems to be struggling the most, and where do we put our efforts in there?
Love it. So cool. This is the beauty of having acquisition and cash flow at the basis of your decision making, because if you already know by the dollar how much you can attribute to last click, then you can make really good, really well informed decisions about what might have to change. You can look at the whole structure of how you acquire customers and how customers move through that journey, and make reasonable decisions, knowing that your 70% of what you need for this channel to be epic is measured by last click, and then you can look and say, oh well, as a whole our portfolio is good. This thing we can track at least that we're break even, and we know that we use the content over here, and that probably gets us a couple more conversions here and there. I think that it becomes really hard for companies, especially who are smaller, that take a purely brand awareness driven approach where they say, we're going to track impressions, because it becomes really difficult to build confidence that the whole picture makes sense.
Yeah.
if you don't have acquisitions kind of at the very bottom, where you can say, okay, all other things aside, we know that we made our money back 2x just on conversions. And in your case, you have lifetime value, and you can factor that in, and that's really
Right.
awesome.
This goes back to, something that we talked about really in the beginning is what percentage of your influencers are you using simply for brand awareness? You know that they're posting regularly and they are getting, engagement. Maybe they have really high engagement rates, which is what you see when an influencer has a, maybe 2 or 5 or 10,000 followers. Their audiences are much more engaged. And then when you get, into these larger ones, the engagement rate goes down. There's more engagement or there's more users overall, but that engagement rate goes down. So really thinking, I have a portion of this that is going to, it's whether I want it to or not, part of it's just going to be brand awareness because not everybody is going to buy in that moment from other people. And then this part is, really, again, it's brand awareness, but these people really speak on a trust level or they answer objections and they do that really well. And so that they fit into this sort of middle of the funnel when people are, going into consideration and like, oh, well, is the price worth it or is that worth it? And they're really, answering those types of questions. And then you have the influencers who are really good at doing the ask and the call to action. Like, hey, I love this. You click on this button and you're going to get it. And, you're going to get all these great products. So there's different activities and different influencers are really good at different aspects of it. And just knowing if you're really confident in how you've approached your program with that sort of mindset, you're going to know, okay, or you're going to have confidence that it's going to be, if your CPAs are good, you're getting a little bit of brand awareness, you're getting a little bit of this trust and overcoming objections, and you're also getting these like strong call to actions, and really evaluating it on that as well as your CPAs. You always have to be profitable, like at least with us. It always every dollar has to be doing something.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that trend will become increasingly prominent in the near future of people actually looking at the dollars at the end of the day. Theresa, thank you so much. You're the best. Everybody go buy a KetoKrate. Anything else you'd like people to do? Do you want to plug something? You said you're launching the podcast, right? So people should go. Yeah.
I don't even have a name for it yet, though.
Do what I did. Just call it exactly what it is. Just call it the KetoKrate Podcast.
The KetoKrate Podcast. Oh my gosh. We will have it. Hopefully we'll get to chat again as I learn and grow and, reach around back to some of the stuff we've talked about with the award ceremonies for influencers and really, sharing their content with other influencers and seeing how that sort of works. I love your ideas. With that, and hopefully we'll be able to chat again on this podcast and I will have an actual name for mine. But until then, if you're just trying to live in a world with less sugar, you are among friends at KetoKrate.
Nice. Good pitch. I love it.